Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to impose certain duties upon Her Majesty's Government to ensure the accuracy, completeness and utility of electoral registers, to make provision for the sharing of data for the purposes of electoral registration and for connected purposes. Madam Deputy Speaker, voting for our representatives is one of the fundamental rights of citizens in a democracy. We are fortunate in this country to be able to hold free and fair elections and see millions of people participating in the democratic process, voting for representatives to this place, to the devolved national legislatures and in regional and local government. There is, however, a real problem with our current system. Millions of people are missing from the electoral register. They are being marginalised and excluded from the democratic process. Whilst it is an individual's decision and responsibility to decide whether to vote, I and many others believe that the government has a duty to make it as simple and convenient as possible for citizens to have their say in elections. Madam Deputy Speaker, individual electoral registration has unsurprisingly not achieved what we were told it would. There are millions of people still missing from the register, and even if people initially register, maintaining their registration is problematic and ineffective. Studies have shown that a large percentage of the missing people are young people or those from minority ethnic backgrounds. And those groups being excluded from the registration process are exactly the groups of people we should be prioritising, because this disenfranchisement is marginalising the already marginalised groups. The rollout of individual electoral registration has been very costly, estimated at some £120 million, and yet it remains an ineffective and inefficient system. At the 2015 general election, 12,800 people were turned away from polling stations, unable to vote because they weren't on the register. And in this year's June general election, the figure was over 10,000. Taking into account the nature of the most marginal constituencies, this number of votes is enough to swing an election result. Can any of us in this place be satisfied that this situation is acceptable? Many non-governmental organisations and charities, such as Bite the Ballot and Hope Not Hate, regularly undertake voter registration drives. But voter registration should not be the responsibility of those organisations. It should be the responsibility of the state, which should do everything it can to ensure as complete an electoral register as possible. Not being on the electoral register has implications that extend beyond the inability to vote. Those not on the register will have their credit rating disadvantaged. They may not have access to mainstream borrowing. They may not be able to obtain a mortgage. They can't undertake jury service and play their part in our justice system. And yet, most people are aware that registering to vote is compulsory. They're aware that they risk being fined for not registering to vote, but we still see enormous gaps in the register. And this is because putting the onus of a complex system on citizens and leaving underfunded local authorities to chase them is clearly not the most efficient or cost-effective way to ensure the completeness of the register. This is why a change is necessary, and this is why the state can and should step in. My bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, would make a change that would implement a common-sense, straightforward and cost-effective system. My bill places a responsibility on the state to do everything in its power to ensure that the electoral register is complete. It imposes a duty on the government and public bodies to work together better, and it proposes to make electoral registration as simple and convenient as possible for citizens. This is achieved by integrating existing trusted national and local data sets, such as national insurance, tax, pension and DWP data, that already contains individuals' names and addresses, and adding citizens to the electoral register at the age of 16 when they are issued with a national insurance number. At each point where a citizen interacts with the state, those trusted databases, data sets, would collate relevant information for the electoral register. So, for example, when tax was paid or social security payment received, a driving licence or a passport issued or updated, a pension claimed or a TV licence purchased. The government is already prioritising anti-fraud and security measures, and in doing so, using data sets from different public bodies. And in the age of big data and digital by default, it's time the government itself adopted these principles for electoral registration. I want at this point to pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Mitcham and Morden, who introduced a similar bill to this House in February 2016, and to Baroness McDonough, who was recently introduced in an automatic electoral registration bill in the other place. It's clear that this is a pressing issue, and there is widespread support for modernising our electoral registration system, including from the Electoral Commission, the Association of Electoral Administrators, and the Electoral Reform Society. The cross-party Political and Constitutional Reform Select Committee, predecessor to the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee, supported automatic electoral registration in its 2015 report on voter engagement in the UK. There are many examples in many countries across the world of successful implementation of automatic voter registration systems. In Canada, for example, electoral information is continually updated with information from other government sources, such as the Canada Revenue Agency, Immigration and Citizenship Services, and drivers' licence agencies. It's also possible in Canada for electors to continue to proactively update their information with the electoral registration administrators. In Chile, a move to automatic registration in 2013 has seen over 4.5 million new voters added to that nation's electoral register, most of them under the age of 30. Clearly a significant improvement in enfranchising young people in that country. Closer to home, Denmark, Germany, Italy and Sweden also add to their electoral registers automatically using various different government-held data sets. A database which would hold the UK-wide register was proposed by the last Labour government, the Coordinated Online Record of Electors, or CORE, system, which would link up with existing information and keep the register up to date. The cost of building the core system was estimated to be £11.4 million and then £2.7 million each year to run thereafter. In 2011, when it was scrapped by the coalition government, they claimed it was not cost effective. But the switch to IER has cost £120 million and we still have an incomplete electoral register. Building the core system and running it annually from 2011 to today would have cost just over £20 million, according to estimated figures, and we would have a much more complete register of electors. The Welsh Labour Government is currently consulting on electoral reform in Wales following the devolution of powers in the Wales Act, and their consultation includes options on data sharing and the possibility of moving to a more automated system. I hope we will very shortly see voters in Wales automatically added to a national electoral register and being able to vote from the age of 16 onwards. With recent general elections hanging on such tight margins, it's obvious why a full and complete register is essential. Mere handfuls of votes swing constituency results and did do so in the general elections of 2015 and 2017. So it is clear that every single vote really does make a difference. And automatic registration would ensure that any boundary reviews carried out in the future would be carried out on the basis of the most accurate register possible. Now, opponents of automatic registration will say that registering is a personal responsibility. I disagree. It's a personal responsibility to vote, and the state should make it as simple and convenient for every citizen to discharge that responsibility, not put barriers and bureaucracy in their way. And that is why it is imperative that automatic electoral registration is implemented as soon as possible so that everyone can have their say. And I commend this motion to the House.
The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. No, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Madam Deputy Speaker, Siobhan McDonough, Kat Smith, Chris Elmore, Vicky Foxcroft, Rachel Maskell, Wes Streeting, Louise Haig, Jim McMahon, Stephanie Peacock, Chris Ruane, Daniel Zeichner and myself.
Automatic Electoral Registration Number 2 Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 19th of January 2018.
Friday the 19th of January 2018. The clerk will now